Once again, here is Hank Hanegraaff.
Thank you very much, Randy. In this segment, I want to pick up once again on the magnificent Gospel of Matthew. Remember the Magi being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, departed for their own country by another route. And then says St. Matthew, now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they were no more.
Are Christians guilty of blind faith? Read Hank Hanegraaff's book, Has God Spoken? Click on the eye above.
Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, and said, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are now dead. Then he arose, took the young child, took his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he had heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene. So here in the last part of Matthew chapter 2, we encounter someone who could be genuinely called, designated a monster. Unlike the Magi, Herod had absolutely no interest in worshiping Messiah. Instead, he wanted Messiah dead. His sights were not set on the heavens. Unfortunately, like so many others before and after him, his sights were set on mean earthly vanities. His sights were set on things below rather than on things above. And in the end, his decadent worship of all of the vanities of life left him with an ulcerated digestive system, left him with an inflamed abdomen, left him even with rotted privates. He had the inability to grasp so much as the air that flowed full and free around him. What an ignominious death in fevered convulsion, he expired. You know, Herod had every single advantage over the Magi. He had what they did not. Think about it. He was a Jew. He was a Jew who was acquainted with the prophets. He knew that Christ and that Christ alone could emerge through the narrow doorway of Old Testament prophecy. And yet it was the Magi, not this monster, who saw the great light and followed it to the birthplace of Messiah. In sharp contrast to the wise men, Herod the Great, who, by the way, was so named for being the greatest builder in Jewish history, so he was a great builder. He was an intimate comrade of Augustus. He was a very important man. He was a confidant of the Jewish chief priests. But in the end, all he really was a selfish tyrant. He was willing to commit any crime in order to gratify his unbounded lusts and ambitions. And that's precisely why he died in the condition that he did. He violated all God's principles for humanity, and he paid the price. It ought to be a warning to everyone.
Access more than 1,500 free articles on Christianity, cults, and aberrant religious teaching. Go to equip.org or click on the eye above.
Herod actually ended up marrying 10 wives. And those wives spawned a wriggling, ambitious brood of sons that turned his palace onto a can of worms. All of them scheming to succeed their father. He was so suspicious of one of his favorite wives that he finally killed her. He killed her mother. He killed her grandfather. He killed his brother-in-law. He murdered 3 sons, and he drowned a high priest. Even his friend Augustus had to admit, I'd rather be Herod's pig than one of his sons. Thus, Matthew accurately portrays Herod for what he was. He was a merciless and manipulative monster. He was a deluded madman, a madman who ordered the massacre of all male babies 2 years or under, all those children in the environs of Bethlehem. The monstrous cruelty of Herod was not a singularity in human history. In biblical history, there was also a Pharaoh. So the cruelty of Herod was foreshadowed by another monster. Pharaoh, who, in an attempt to annihilate the power of the Israelites, offered the killing of the newborn baby boys as a way to extend his own power, terrified that he might lose power in this world, power hungry, power mad. Well, the next broadcast, I want to pick up once again on the theme of typology. We just talked about a monster, contrasted the monster and the Magi. But typology is something that I want to focus in on because of its significance in terms of reaching skeptics, even seekers. What Matthew is talking about when he says that the escape of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus to Egypt until the death of Herod, which Matthew says was the fulfillment of the prophet Hosea, out of Egypt I called my son, is typological prophecy. And you have to understand that. I talked about that when I talked about Isaiah 7:14. being fulfilled in Matthew 2. But I also want to talk about it again. I should say Matthew chapter 1. I also want to talk about it again so that if you go back and read Hosea, you're going to immediately see that Hosea seems to be talking about Israel, but he's talking in essence about something far more grand as well. Once you understand typological prophecy, you get some kind of a sense of how all the types and shadows of the Old Testament are ultimately fulfilled in the New Testament. The type and shadow giving away to the substance.